walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversation swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going somewhere.
Good morning, Alan.
Good evening, Leanne. We keep doing this. I'm sorry, we keep doing this. So I'm going to have to get a lot more shirts, I think.
Yeah, well, I think we keep doing it just so we can hear the jingle. That's just the excuse for doing the show. Hey, welcome to another episode of Talk the Walk. This is number 16. This has gone really fast. I can't believe we've done 16 episodes already.
Wow.
I know. Now, I just want to check in with you because you've recommended a show in your forum, American Primeval, and I've just finished watching it. Whoa, pretty brutal.
Pretty brutal, and it's probably accurate reflection of what it was like back then.
Yeah, well, actually, I was doing a bit more research about it, and there was an article saying it probably was even more brutal back then, which is horrific. And so for some light watching, I wanted to keep it on theme, but I'm watching Housewives of Salt Lake City now.
Well, you're still in the same general geographic area.
I'm in the same geographic area. It's definitely a lot lighter. If you're joining us live, let us know where you're joining us from and what you're watching on Netflix as well. And let us know if you have any comments today too. Alan, you've had a good week?
I've had a very good week. Yeah. Today, there's some snow on the ground here, but I consider it a snow day because this is Wednesday here and I should have worked out this morning, but I got a message from my trainer who said he was sick and couldn't come in. So like I was back in grammar school, I got a snow day.
Yeah, you got a snow day, you got some time off. And I bet you didn't do anything physical. You just sort of kept reading a book or
didn't do anything physical. I did a lot of writing. I had a couple of coaching calls and, I recognize I should work out, but this was beyond my control. So I feel really, I'm absolved.
Yeah, well, it just goes like the power of having a coach and someone that is there to guide you and keep you accountable. A lot of the time, do you find that's part of what you do as a coach for others is like just sort of make them step up?
Well, yeah, because it's all about accountability. And if I try to work out by myself, which I've tried to do, I cheat. And so he doesn't let me cheat. I don't like other people cheat. Now, this is the beginning of your day. So what do you got in store for yourself?
Well, I've already been for a run. I got up at about 5 o'clock, went for a 30-minute run. I've walked the dogs. This is my first coffee. I'll grab one after this. I'm actually going to visit a friend who has a podcast. A shout out to Cherie Canning, and we're doing a face-to-face podcast interview today. But I've got a lot of things on the list to do. I was going to say you don't like to-do lists, so a lot of results to create today. Is what I'll say. Yeah, and we've got Dee Dee joining us from California. Dee Dee, great to have you here. Virginia in Melbourne, lovely to see you, Virginia. And Brian is joining us from Edmonton. So just in that example, we've got 3 countries represented. It's lovely to have you here. Yeah, amazing. Unless the US takes over Canada, but we can talk about that later. So,
given the Canadian dollar and the Australian dollar, you might want to sell to us. I mean, what do you're at 60 cents or something.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 60 cents. It was when I was in Vegas. Oh, it's gone down to 65 recently. I don't know if it's down to 60 yet. But terrible. Makes it it is terrible.
I mean, I don't know for why the country, but we're close to a point where I could say buy New South Wales. I don't know.
You could, yeah. Queensland's a bit more expensive.
Okay, David.
Okay, so today's topic is how can you harness AI before it harnesses you? Look, is it even possible to harness AI, Alan?
Yeah, it's another tool, and if you can belong to the Chicken Little school of thought where we're all going to die because the sky's falling and AI is going to take us over and eat our intestines out. But I don't believe that. First, you have to understand that AI right now is probably at 80% accuracy. That is, from what I'm reading and from what I'm experiencing, it makes errors about 20% of the time. For example, we looked up when one of my early books was published, and the response from AI was 20%, was 4 years off, 4 years wrong. So it's a tool to use. And so in the next 90 days, I'm going to have AI, which AI, of course, stands for Allen Intelligence. Let's get that straight. I'm going to have Allen Intelligence on my site, and people will be able to access my thinking, my body of work by asking questions. And so you might say, how do I move a client from hourly work to value-based fees? And it will tell you in a narrative using my words. And then it will give the sources, video, audio, text, whatever. And you can click on these links and download, and you can do that as much as you want. So in terms of being a tool for us consultants, That's very valuable.
That's really valuable. And I love that it links into something that you can read or watch or consume for more information. You've built this up. I'm just curious, like this, I know you've had the Growth Access platform, and that's where every month you've added new work to that. You've built up bodywork over decades now. So is that what you're pulling from? Is it from that, or are you just pulling, I'm just curious, do you know
Well, I'm pulling from that and beyond that. For example, they just solved the technical issue of including all of my books. And so there'll be 50, 60 books on there. And so if you ask a question about fees, there'll be excerpts from value-based fees. There'll be excerpts from $1 Million Consulting. There might be excerpts from how to write a proposal. And so and it might say page 36 or so forth. And so my prior platforms, you chose topics and you listened to my video and somebody else's video, but you weren't asking a specific question of your own. You had to go by the topic. Now you can ask whatever you want. So if you have a meeting tomorrow, before that meeting, go in there and say, what should I do if the buyer doesn't show up? What should I do if the buyer has 3 other people there? You can learn that in advance.
That's incredible. Yes, I'm definitely going to sign up, and I know you've got a special rate before you go live.
Yeah, that's right.
As well. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So I love this as an idea that we can use because and what you're just demonstrating is how you can use AI to bring in all the work that you've created. So you haven't created it using AI, but using AI as a tool to connect and solve problems as well. I guess I'm employing AI really from a productivity point of view. And I was reflecting on that even yesterday. Something that you talk about is how important language is. What is your language controls discussions? What was or relationships? What's that sort of triage?
Language controls discussion controls relationships control business. That's right.
Yeah. And so the good thing about having a tool in your back pocket that can help you sort of craft language, once you upload your tone of voice and it gets used to that, I'm doing things a lot quicker as a result because I'm not having to think about this specific word. What does that mean for me? Does it mean that, great, Leanne's going to be amazing on emails and text, but when you see her in person, she's still the same old Leanne? The language has not improved. What does it mean? Are you getting lazier? Or?
You're raising a very important point because a lot of people tell me they love my books because I write the way I speak. It's the same voice and vice versa. And I think that's very important to have a consistent voice with people. And one of the problems with AI is that when you allow it to write something for you that's not a set of directions or regulations or instructions, right? But it's actually some kind of narrative, it tends to be very bombastic. I can spot AI 2 miles away, my AI radar, so to speak, and you can tell somebody's using it. So I think you have to be very judicious in how you use this stuff so you remain natural. And it's good for research, it's good for looking things up. Like I said, sometimes you need to verify because there is this 20% error rate. Now, maybe that'll go down to 2%, but it's still going to be something in there. But it's a tool like any other tool. You use it where it's appropriate. You wouldn't use a hammer if you had to put a screw in. You'd use a screwdriver. This is another tool we have. So from what you're seeing among your clients, for example, how are your clients employing AI? Are they scared of it, or are they aggressive with it, or what?
Yeah, it's almost like a bell curve of how they're using it. And I find a lot of because Microsoft has something called Copilot. So that's actually embedded now within Microsoft Teams and everything else. So when they're drafting an email, there's a prompt that would come up just to help them write that. So they're using that. They're using tools like to transcribe meetings. Sometimes though, that gives them an excuse not to attend a meeting. Yeah. But it also, but I think it goes back to that core question of, are you actually having a meeting to make a decision, or are you just talking about stuff?
That's right.
So, yeah.
When I coach people in my elite programs, I always send them bullet points later, even if they record it. I send them bullet points, but now I also send them AI Companion, which kicks in automatically on Zoom and gives a very almost tendentious long list of what was discussed. But you can go through there and see if there anything we missed, in our summaries. And so I find that what Zoom does with that to be very, very beneficial. And especially when we're dealing, if I were coaching you or you were coaching me, we know each other. And so we can put that into work as well. But it has some great utility to it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, even like the reason I can do a daily podcast in 2025 is because I've got AI to help transcribe stuff, create show notes automatically. When I first started my podcast, I was outsourcing to 2 different people around the world. And so that workflow took about a week. Now I can record an episode in 5 minutes. It's up. Show notes are there. The transcript's there. The episode title's there. I mean, that's amazing. And it's still me. Like, it's not like I'm outsourcing the content. I'm very human in my episodes.
Now that's interesting. I mean, I think that's a great process that you got. But when I do a podcast, I write my own show notes because I can do it in 90 seconds. I can do it really fast, but it's me. And if I used AI, it wouldn't really be me, and I'd have to probably edit it, which would take me longer. Now I'm not saying you're doing something wrong, but for me, that suits me better. And but I would just as soon get AI when I'm, you set up a new television or whatever the heck it is. I mean, hell, you buy a picture frame, they give you a video now on how to put the picture frame up. It's ridiculous. So, if this were an AI, it would be a lot easier to go through the steps that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just do a few shout outs here. So Brian is sharing, we will never become part of the US. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, same with Australia. I'm with you, Brian. Sebastian's from Poland. So we got excellent. Great to have the European continent on. So annoyed with Copilot, I can write without help on every email. So yeah, I think there's an option to switch it off, DD, or I think you might be paying extra for it. So just check your Microsoft subscription settings. DD does like the Zoom thing though, all the notes. So like all that sort of automated admin. So I feel like, I remember, I don't know if you said this, Alan, in one of our growth cycles, but you're like, the business model for a consultant should be, you just get paid to think and speak. Like, I love that.
You get paid to advise people, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But what if AI gets so good at advising, like it's got your body of work in there, it's got like the legends of this work in it, so people can brainstorm using the tool. Why would they come see a consultant?
Oh, for a lot of reasons. I mean, for one thing, only a consultant can really understand the nature and the strategy of a business and its particular complexion and composition. And so this is more than just crunching data. It's knowing what the owner of the business is like and the family is like, or knowing what this executive is like at a larger business and what their culture is. So AI can help crunch the data for you. And so, for example, right now, as I understand it in the US, at least, I guess elsewhere, AI is doing a far better job of predicting weather patterns than meteorologists. And that does not surprise me. Because they're often wrong. If you apply, I mean, it might put gambling out of business. I think AI is going to get to a point, not in roulette and games where it's all random, but in craps, in blackjack, and things like this. It might put some of this out of business because look, I have more computer power here than in the first moon landing, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to look at a ring that has a chip in it, and you're going to look and it's going to tell you whether to bet on the next roll or not, right? I can see that coming. I can see accountants disappearing. You don't need accountants for your tax return if you have AI. I can see actuaries and insurance companies disappearing. And so here's the difference. Here's the shift in labor. What do you have down there? DHL or UPS or?
Yes, we have DHL. Yeah.
Okay, and you have FedEx probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not going to fire drivers. No. Right? You're not going to have autonomous trucks with some robot going to the door with a package. But they're firing schedulers right now because AI has taken over the scheduling. And so ironically, or maybe not ironically, you see a decrease in white collar and more of a need for blue collar.
Yeah. So, but I'm not going to become like a hairdresser or a plumber now. So I have to but like my husband is a diesel fitter. He is a mechanic. Like he'll never be out of, not that he wants to do that for the rest of his life, but there is something around the trade schools, the community colleges that train these skills that in Australia, like we really are short on construction workers. We are having to pull people in from overseas, get visas, like radically upskill. Electricians aren't completing their apprenticeships. Like there's so much, it's just a really interesting time in terms of what we need. And then the universities still seem to get like a lot of funding and things as well. What about universities? Will they?
There's a seismic shift in universities because you cannot continue to charge. I'm talking about the US here, these extravagant tuitions. Remote learning, which is not very good at primary and secondary school level, is very effective at higher education. You've got no longer the need to house and dress and park and feed students if they can learn remotely. And some schools are now specializing in this. So tuitions drop precipitously. And you can learn much better using AI. I mean, colleges have to be careful about exams and things, or they're going to get some AI regurgitation, right? Uh, so education will undergo a seismic shift. And I also think that, you're not going to become a plumber, though I bet you'd be a damn good plumber. But I do think that you're going to see trades change dramatically. And for example, right now, they have automated dealers in the casinos. They're computers.
Yeah.
Right now, well, probably for 30 years, we've had automated assembly lines, right? So robots put these cars together for a long, long time. But now we have robots putting in replacement hips and replacement knees. We have robots doing that.
Oh, wow.
And so when you talked about construction before, I think we're going to see more and more construction that's almost entirely automated. Prefab pieces put into place and so forth. So, we have 3D manufacturing, right? So this just extrapolating this into more and more dramatic applications. So I think that's all coming.
Yeah, and even like the plumbing example, sometimes you don't actually need a plumber. You just need a plumber to diagnose what the problem is, and then you can fix it yourself. Like if it's like, hey, this is a leak happening, they'll be like, all right, here are the 3 checks. He or she could say that, and I could potentially fix it. So I think, maybe it's being a bit smarter as well and having those kind of like satellite offices that you dial in. I mean, with telehealth, it's the same thing. You're just getting a diagnosis online, but sometimes.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying, sometimes though, I've heard that AI is more accurate in diagnosing diseases.
Yes, that's right. And it removes the personal biases aspect. But, I've got some old books down here, do-it-yourself books, how you fix this, how you fix that. But now we'll just say to the equivalent of Siri or, hey, Google, we'll say, okay, I've got the screw out. They'll say, okay, move to your left and take out this, and then move to your right and do this. And so it will enhance people's ability to be more independent in fixing things and creating things.
Yeah. Sebastian shares, the problem with AI as an accountant is accountability. AI often gets things wrong. I think it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of this episode. And thanks, Sebastian, for your comment around, it's about 80% there, but sometimes you need that sort of, I guess, maybe overlord to be like.
But look, Sebastian raised a really good point, but here's the difference. If you have an accounting firm with 35 accountants, I have a client like this with 35 accountants, and you replace those 35 accountants with AI, you need maybe 3 people now to validate what AI came up with using probably other forms of AI. And so you won't reduce every accountant in the world, but you'll reduce firms by 90%. It just makes sense with anything analytic and data oriented that's going to happen.
So if you're an accountant joining us on the live stream now and listening to this or watching the replay, you might be freaking out, right? What should you be doing to get ahead of this? Like, do you become a plumber? Like, what would you recommend in terms of their steps to remain relevant?
I would say to you that, there were people at one point who were farriers and they were excellent at putting on horseshoes. And while there are still certain farriers around, people don't use horses anymore for everyday transportation. It's now a specialty. And so they turn to other things. And if they were adept with an anvil and so forth, they might change to other kinds of creation, or they might turn to a different job entirely. And this has happened throughout civilization. So people should be asking themselves, and this goes back to higher education, people should be asking themselves, not just, is this a profession that's now needed and I love, but will you still love me tomorrow? And which was a Shirelle song, I think, because there might not be a need for your job. I mean, what I'm telling corporate clients is this. Somebody says to me, this person just left, they were indispensable. How can I replace them quickly? And I say, don't do that. Think about the job you need for tomorrow before you hire someone for yesterday.
Yeah.
And this applies, to a lot of different jobs. Air traffic controllers, there's a shortage of them. It's a difficult, stressful job. We're going to need a hell of a lot less of them because AI can coordinate a hell of a lot more planes there. Now, you go back to Sebastian's question. Yeah, but what if it makes a mistake? You have a couple of supervisors there. An alarm goes off, a red light flashes and says this might not be the best outcome. And so check into this, but that's how you take care of it.
Yeah. And it's almost like you got to be a bit like Madonna, like constantly reinventing yourself. Like that's it. Just be like Madonna.
How long does it work for her, right?
Oh, she's incredible. Anyone you've remained relevant as well. Like you know what I mean? Like you've consistently, the fact that you're now leading the way and using AI as Allen intelligence. Like you are doing this too. Yeah.
That's right. So I don't ask myself, oh God, is this a threat? I don't ask myself, what should I do? Who can I follow? I said to myself, how can I use this to the benefit of my clients? right? It's just like I said to a group I talked to earlier today. Stop saying, how do I raise fees? Ask yourself, how do I raise value? And so about AI, you have to say, how can I use this to raise my value? And that means that you use it. I mean that literally, but you can't be supplanted by it. And if there's a danger, it will supplant you. You got to think of an alternative. You got to think of something else to do.
Yeah, I really like that, because I think like, I guess I've been coming from it from a point of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be obsolete. And it's like, that's a question of fear. But the more offensive question, OFF question is, yeah, how can I use it to add value? Like that's always what I want to do, but it's more proactive and more of a exciting question to answer versus how do I remain current, which is kind of, yeah, fear-led. Brian has a question. Brian asks, how can we avoid the laziness factor in using AI? So constantly consulting it, opening up and brainstorming with it.
Yeah, I'd say, Brian, don't default to it. The danger in life is what we default to, what we do automatically. Like a lot of people default to problems instead of opportunities. So I would say if somebody asks you a question, if a client has a challenge, your immediate position should be, okay, how do I solve this? How do I help? What can I do? And I would only resort to AI if I needed data I didn't have, like what was the year something was invented, or where can I find a certain book? But I you know, in the consulting world, in the you know, professional help world, the expertise world, we've got to be able to have enough of a body of work where we can draw upon our experience and say, here's where I think you are. And so separate out. What I'm saying to you, Brian, is separate out judgment from factual need. So you can always use, just like we used to use encyclopedias for factual need, to say it's much faster, but you can't expect it to replace judgment.
Love that. Yeah, that's a really great distinction, Alan. Thank you. I'm not too sure who this is, but thank you for asking your question. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft Research in the UK recently found generative AI affects critical thinking. Back to judgment, right? What you've said. Knowledge workers that use AI feel that they are less likely to be thinking critically. Right. What does that impact on key business decisions?
Yeah, that was Brian's question, really. And I think that the impact is that we're going to lose nuance. For example, a key aspect of decision making is to look at risk, and risk entertains both probability and seriousness. Will this likely occur? Can I prevent that? And if it does occur, how bad is it? And can I ameliorate that? And so I think that we have to be careful about not losing the nuance, the texture in decision making and in all critical thinking skills, because otherwise you've got like a lockstep approach here that might not be appropriate for the particular client or situation you're facing. And so we have to embrace that. You know, the first sale's to ourselves, and we have to understand that level of judgment, of sensitivity, of empathy really can't be replaced by machine.
Yeah. Like you can imagine people just walking around and deciding whether they want a cheeseburger or a Big Mac and then having to consult their chat GPT.
Or let's say you had an AI doctor. There's no bedside manner.
No, and that's really important. And even I was talking to a friend who works in a global business in the learning and development space, and we were talking about, look, our workshop's obsolete, and it's more maybe a case of, if it's not about the content, is it about bringing people together, having that, like, learning from each other in the context of the business that you're in. AI can't teach that. What do you think about, I mean, this is probably a bit broader, but with a lot more people, like the younger generation, spending more time on screens, not getting out into the world as much. In terms of business, like I've heard that there are going to be one-person billion-dollar businesses. Do you think people working in offices will be a thing in 20 to 30 years, or will it just be all distributed workforces for knowledge workers if we're still around?
Well, I don't know about 20 or 30 years. You know, I advocate just looking a year out. And I would say in the short term, managers and leaders, executives are going to have to learn how to manage and lead and help motivate a remote workforce. I don't think they know today. I don't think they're trying to understand it today. There's a different dynamic. I think you and I have talked about the fact that executives make placement and promotion decisions based upon interacting with someone in real time, three-dimensionally. And so there has to be the ability to provide for that. But you know, remote work is not going away. The airlines have had reservation agents working out of their home for 20 years. You know, it was with a phone connection, and they were doing it like this, but now it's online. So This is going to get more and more popular because it alleviates the need to commute. It reduces traffic congestion. It takes care of childcare elements. It takes care of, illnesses of family members and pets and so forth. So I think that's just a given. And I think that organizations are lacking right now in how you effectively manage and lead that.
Yeah, agree. And there's maybe being quite defensive and like, well, you must come in 5 days a week because we don't want to change.
So silly. I mean, that is, whether it's government and Elon Musk in our case, or it's I think Elon Musk did that with his SpaceX company, said you got to be there every day. That doesn't heighten productivity. It doesn't do anything except it lets you know where people are geographically, which is immaterial.
Yeah, agree. Okay, now, Alan, so share a bit about what you're bringing out with AI, with Alan Intelligence.
Well, you will be able, for example, to sign in there when you have a meeting the next day and the CEO or your buyer has said, look, I'm going to have 2 board members with me for this project, as you describe it. And so you can say, what do I do with 2 board members in a meeting? I mean, you can ask questions like that. And you will get a narrative answer and you will get sources, which you can then click on. You get these links. You could say, I just walked out of a meeting and instead of getting the deal, which I thought I would, they have put it off for 3 months saying they have to hire somebody. How can I move that up? And you'll get the advice. So it's real time. And I mean, you can ask strategic questions like, should I go into this marketplace? But you can also ask very tactical short-term questions, which I think people need. People used to say to me, how can I get coach on a shoulder? In other words, how can I get an earpiece and you tell me what to do in the moment? And I'll tell you, it was $200,000. So pay up and I'll tell you. But this is close to a coach on your shoulder.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do this on your iPhone in the elevator, going to your appointment.
I'd be terrified to have you in my ear when I was talking to someone. I'd be like, I'm not saying that out loud. That's wonderful. And after this, we'll put a link to your offering in the link underneath this video as well, so you can find it there. And I just want to say I've got one more tent available for my red carpet camp out, a luxury tent. That's happening on the 10th to 12th of March. If you'd like to come along. Couple more comments and then we'll close up for this. Brian, I'm working with a university client who wants to strategically position her faculty as a world leader in research. How can they leverage AI to achieve that goal?
I'll give you a nonconformist answer, Brian. I'll practice what I preach and tell you something nuanced here. I would say that your university client, to achieve that, should come out with new and provocative questions and not try to come out with solutions, because a solution is only as good as that condition exists, So the horseshoe is only good as long as people are riding horses. But if you keep asking provocative questions, those questions can remain forever, no matter what you're dealing with. And so I think if you look at the great minds of history, if you look at Edison or Einstein or anybody, they didn't come out spouting answers. They asked really intelligent, provocative questions.
That's so good. I love that response. And final question from Virginia. In my industry, advertising, we are seeing more and more organizations mandating more days in the office. It's like history is reversing. When does a shift to remote really kick in? Can I just say a quick one, please. Alan? Oh, just a quick one. I heard actually Steve Bleistein, who we both know, he reminded me of this quote that science progresses one funeral at a time. And I don't know who said that, but he quoted it. I can't find the original source, but I think it's almost the same thing. Like maybe when my generation gets into leadership roles, we'll see a difference. What do you think, Alan?
I don't think it's generational. I think, Virginia, that in this case, the shift will kick in when talent leaves. Market demand, it's a capitalist system. And if you can't keep the best people because they don't want to come into the office, if you find you're being out-competed, outsold, out-marketed by other people whose policies are more lenient, you're going to change your ways. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I think that given there's a labor shortage and a talent shortage, people are going to go not just where they get the most money, but where they get the most recognition for their talent and where they get the most agency to work in a manner that they find comfortable.
Yeah, here. Okay, I did say one last, but we've had a comment come through. So I'm curious about this. If you look at historical expansion around the world, like the East India Tea Company, which was active in the 1600s, they had to work remotely and had little control. Oh yeah, so Britain had control. All right, today you can monitor time on screen, have Zoom calls, phone people, measure output. Yet people are more worried than ever about remote work. So same thing, I guess, it's more of a comment, but why? Is it just the lack of trust? I mean, everything you spoke about, Alan, just poor leadership?
Well, first of all, understand the East India Company came with the magnificent intransigence of the British bureaucratic hierarchy. And so there was a lot of accountability locally. It took months for it to get back to the British Isles, but locally, there was tremendous conformance because there was tremendous enforcement of accountability. But I would say that you're going to find it here because people will have no choice but to learn how to deal with remote people, just as you have no choice but to get out of the rain if you don't like being wet. And so you're going to have to learn to do this or you will not be competitive. You'll be drenched.
Yeah, I'm going to be like Madonna. And again, it's one of the catchphrases from today. Now, next Talk the Walk is on your birthday, Alan, the 3rd of March.
March 3rd. Yep.
Yay, 4th of March if you're in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're watching the replay, we really appreciate that. Let us know your comments. Like, what was the number one thing that you picked up from today's conversation? Alan, it's always a pleasure. And have a good day. Have a good evening.
You have a good day, Leanne, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.